close read D Wright's Tours. You see, I got the poem up here. I also have a recording of Wright reading it. So let's listen to C.D. Wright read the poem here. Here she is. C.D. Wright was a professor at Brown. She passed away in 2016.
Tours. A girl on the stairs listens to her father beat up her mother. Doors bang. She comes down in her nightgown. The piano stands there in the dark like a boy with an orchid. She plays what she can, then she turns the lamp on. Her mother's music is spread out on the floor like brochures. She hears her father running through the leaves. The last black key she presses stays down, makes no sound. Someone putting their tongue where their tooth had been.
Let's listen to it one more time.
Tours. A girl on the stairs listens to her father beat up her mother. Doors bang. She comes down in her nightgown. The piano stands there in the dark like a boy with an orchid. She plays what she can, then she turns the lamp on. Her mother's music is spread out on the floor like brochures. She hears her father running through the leaves. The last black key she presses stays down, makes no sound. Someone putting their tongue where their tooth had been.
All right, so let's look at Tours here. The first stanza, pretty intense, uh, brutal poem in a number of ways. You know, we're in some uncomfortable territory, so brace yourselves, folks. Tours. So we have a girl on the stairs, listens to her father beat up her mother. Doors bang. She comes down in her nightgown. That's the first stanza. We have 4 lines here, a quatrain. It's such a interesting first stanza in that it doesn't have any big poetic fireworks or movements, or it's not announcing itself as a poem like in Henri Cole's Oil and Steel, right? Remember, my father lived in a dirty dish mausoleum. Right off the bat, that first line, we're in capital P poetry. Here, there's, if we were to type this out, it would read like prose. It doesn't even read like poetry. The only really thing that makes it a poem is that it's lineated into lines. But let's look at this. A girl on the stairs listens to her father beat up her mother. Look at the reaction of the girl. What does this reaction tell us? This listens here. It tells us that it's something that the girl is accustomed to. She's almost, I wouldn't say used to it, but it's happened before. One could imagine that the first time or two, the girl probably freaked out. She was probably screaming, crying, trying to stop it, or now she just listens, right? And we have the second line, beat up her mother. It's such a brutal description there. It doesn't need any big poetic fireworks. It's just stating what's happening, which is brutal enough. Doors bang. There's that. If any of you are door slammers, door bangers, when you get in an argument, there's that strange, eerie vibration sound after doors bang, right? It's like it emphasizes the quietness, but there's in the air, you can almost feel the doors banging in the air. And the doors bang here, we have the mother going to her room and banging the door, father leaving the house, right? And banging the front door. And then we get the girl here. She comes down in her nightgown. So this is the girl's poem. She's the hero of the poem here. Let's see what she does. The girl comes down in her nightgown. The piano stands there in the dark like a boy with an orchid. What a strange, fascinating simile metaphor there, right? It's the first kind of poetic moment in the poem. The piano stands there in the dark like a boy with an orchid. It's a strange image. If you go back to Bloom and Eliot, it's a strange image. It's not a common image. Like a boy with an orchid. Think of that. To the girl, the piano is welcoming. It could be soothing in a way. It could be a friend. If you study flowers, what's flowers, right? Orchid meaning. So, uh, orchid meaning symbolism. So we have the so orchid meanings: fertility, virility, love, elegance. So we have the different. If you study flowers, that's in there for a reason. If we think back to oil and steel, schnauzers, bushmills, it's important that it's a specific flower, an orchid. An orchid is also quite fragile, right? It's very fragile. But it can also be, once the orchid dies, you can bring it back to life. My sister is an orchid fanatic, and she can nurse an orchid back to life. So the orchid is both fragile and resilient. This girl in the poem is both fragile and resilient, right? But the piano symbolizes this. It's a source of comfort. It's a source of calming. It's a coping mechanism for the girl. Let's see. She plays what she can, then she turns the lamp on. So the girl, we can see she's not a piano expert here. And we can almost guess her age, perhaps. How old do you think the girl is? 8, 9, 10, maybe. Uh, if usually when a young child is part of a domestic scene like this, or growing up in a bad home, as soon as they're old enough to go out and go to their friends and hang out and run around, 12, 13, 14, 15, they're out of the house. When a child's younger than that, in many ways, it's like they're hostage to the house. They can't go anywhere. It's not like she can just get up and go, right? So I think we can point her age at being somewhere 8, 9, 10. She's not an expert, but she plays. She plays what she can, and she's playing in the dark. And then she turns the lamp on. So right here, these parts of the poem, the girl playing the piano, it's acting as salve or balm or calming uh, coping mechanism. It's helping her. Her mother's music is spread out on the floor like brochures. The piano and the music also connects her with her mother. And we see the other poetic line, the simile, like an orchid, like brochures. What are brochures? Ask yourself, what are brochures? Aren't they, well, let's go to our, brochures definition. Uh, Small book or magazine, information about product or service. I think of brochures when, think of traveling on the highway. You go to a truck stop and there's all those brochures. They almost promise escape, to get away, to travel. They promise you somewhere else. So the music is a promise of something else. It's working like that. It's an escape for the girl and possibly for the mother as well. And this connects them together. The girl hears her father running through the leaves. So, and dad's outside just running away through the leaves. You hear that boots or shoes on leaves running. And if you go back to that sheet, a few notes on reading poems. One of the things I always look for in a poem, and I think a good poem or a great poem has attention to sensory details and images: taste, touch, seeing, smell, hearing. Right. This poem has an attention to sound. There's an attention to sound throughout this poem. Listens to the father beat her mother, all those horrible sounds there. The slamming of the doors banging, the playing of the piano, the keys and the notes on the piano, the father running through the leaves. And at the end, there's an abrupt change. The last black key she presses stays down, makes no sound. someone putting their tongue where their tooth had been. This ending is both beguiling, frustrating, and I think magical. We have sound, 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 complete silence. The last black key she presses stays down, makes no sound. And this final line, I'm so intrigued by it. The grammar is off. Someone is singular, there is plural. And obviously now their works is singular, but when the poem was written in 82, this wouldn't agree. And if this was in your English class, your teacher would put red ink all over this. Why is this? Why do we have singular someone, plural there? Let's talk about this briefly. The girl, the first time I read this poem, the first instinct went to the mother's tooth. Perhaps the father knocked out the mom's tooth. In class before, someone also mentioned it could be the little girl who lost a tooth and she's putting her tooth, her tongue where her tooth had been. If it specifically referred to either one of them, I think it would read the mom putting her tooth where her tongue had been, the girl putting her tooth where her tongue had been. It would be her, the girl, her, she, her. Throughout the poem, we have the pronoun she, her, she, her. The pronoun is very specific. I think this last line, it breaks the frame of the poem that shows the poem, in a sense, is a microcosm. It's a zoom in of this moment of domestic violence, a horrible moment, and how the girl deals with it, what she does. She has this coping mechanism of the piano that helps her, but she can only play the piano for so long, and then it's done. But I think this breaks the frame of the poem to illustrate it's not just this girl that's going through this. I always ask what's fascinating about this poem. What's the race of the girl? We don't know. Where does the girl live? We don't know. We know she lives in a place where there are leaves outside. What part of the country? We don't. I think it's specific in certain descriptions, but not specific in others. So that I think it illustrates this scene could be happening anywhere in the country or the world, and people are dealing with these things. The lack of sound at the end, the tongue where their tooth had been, something's missing. What's missing in this family? What's missing in this family? Any sense of, domestic tranquility? Any sense of normalcy? If you think of music and piano, there's no harmony in the family. Harmony's missing. The girl is she's growing up in this horrible domestic situation, so that's missing, right? This emptiness, this lack of sound at the end is missing. So that's a quick look at Tours, the girl in this situation, dealing with this scene, playing what she can, and until she can no longer play, right? And then she has to go back to reality. So that's a quick look at Tours.